Subcommittee on Oversight and Accountability will come to order. The purpose of this hearing is to examine the State Department's climate policy and the budget of the Special Presidential Envoy for Climate's office. I now recognize myself for an opening statement. As we examine the State Department's climate agenda and budget, we are joined today by former Secretary of State John Kerry. Thank you for being here today. First ever Special Presidential Envoy for Climate. Mr. Kerry, you're sitting in a newly created position, but from all of the research that I've done in 2 years, you've largely managed to avoid any real oversight or accountability in that position. Now, my community cares about this as an issue. We sit on Florida's East Coast. We felt the consequences of environmental disaster. I'm a member of the Bipartisan Climate Solutions Caucus, a co-chair of the Roosevelt Conservation Caucus, and I believe that it's critical that we do work to defend our environment, clean air, clean water, public health. Protecting our environment is important. I don't know a person literally in Congress that doesn't believe that protecting our environment is important, but as you and I have discussed, and I've said this to you before, you can't worry about the efficiency of your home if you can't make rent, if you can't make your mortgage payment, and you can't worry about the emissions of your automobile payment, of your automobile if you can't make the payment on your car. You can't worry about the way America is electrified, or you have to worry about the way America is electrified as we look to the future to make sure that our electric grid can support the policies that are being pushed. And it seems in many cases like you are hell-bent on enacting policies not by votes through the House of Representatives and the Senate, but by fiat. Secretary Blinken has said that your leadership will be indispensable in weaving climate into the fabric of everything we do at State Department. Personally, I don't believe that climate should be the focus of every part of diplomacy, which is the job of the State Department. And I believe that we probably disagree about that. But regardless, it is clear to me that you, even having served as a longtime senator, you are willing to push the envelope of what it means to live in a constitutional republic in order to get the agenda that the administration sees enacted. And no matter how somebody watching this hearing feels about climate change, I believe that that should be of large concern to them. This is my chief concern about your office. You're serving on the National Security Council, but you're not confirmed by the Senate. In your previous role as Secretary of State, you unilaterally entered our nation into some of the largest agreements, like the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the Iran nuclear deal, unilaterally bound Americans to set standards that would dramatically increase their cost of living or affect their way of life in the Paris Climate Accords. And I believe that speaks volumes about your overarching philosophy as it applies to governing and what you're doing now as what some people have called the climate czar. Mr. Kerry, nobody voted for you in this body. It seems like, once again, the rules don't apply to the president's inner circle. He has called you his best buddy. That brings me to my second concern that I want to speak about today, and it's just basic levels of transparency, the mechanisms of transparency in government that your office has not participated in to be accountable to the people. Every time you travel to a climate summit or King Charles' coronation or the wedding of the Crown Prince of Jordan, you're supposed to document the carbon emissions generated by your trip. Your office has failed to do so. You're supposed to produce an organizational chart of your office. Your office only did so when there was a lawsuit filed and filled in none of the names of the people that work in your office. You ignore most congressional requests for documents, have ignored those from the House Foreign Affairs Committee and the House Oversight Committee for months. You're supposed to respond to FOIA requests, but claim that it would take years to produce basic budgetary information, in some cases not willing to release it until 2024. You're supposed to be clear about the work that you do on behalf of the American people, but you don't have a landing page on the State Department's website. I don't believe this is how you fulfill the White House's promise to bring transparency and truth back to government. And it is my assessment that you are afraid of the American people knowing exactly what it is that you are up to at places like the climate change conferences that you attend. You are headed off to COP28 soon. You've been to COP27 and other summits and purporting to represent the United States of America. But you're not representing the United States of America's people, in my opinion. I believe that you are representing a far-left radical agenda. Those are my beliefs. But the truth is because of the lack of transparency, no one really knows exactly what it is that you are representing. Again, I want to go back to my opening remarks. I want to talk about some of the lack of transparency and just say, Secretary, number one, can you direct me to your website, your landing page, your About Your Office section, mission statement section of your website?
Well, I have a
state.gov / whatever.
I can direct you to the CN, the congressional notice, which had a very detailed chart that I have here, which lays
But
out
every
our
consular, every bureau, they have a website, tells about their mission statement, everything. Do you have that at state? Because I couldn't, honestly, myself and my staff, we couldn't find that.
Well, we certainly have location.
If you all find it, get it to us.
We use
Love
the
to have it.
we use the State Department website.
So you use the states, but you don't have your own landing page on state that says about you, your mission statement, you name it.
We
Check. I want to move on to some other levels of just what's going on with the hierarchy in your office. As I said, 2021 FOIA request, your office replied that you wouldn't get back to it until about 2024. It's 2023. We'd like a few answers. Now, I'm not going to ask for every one of these, but I would love to know the names of the individuals that actually answer to you. Who are the ones that directly answer to you so we can know a little bit about your office, and then we'll give this chart to somebody in your office, and maybe they can fill out the rest of the names while you're here answering questions for us. It would be very helpful. Who is your Deputy Envoy for Climate?
I have two deputies, and they are well known. They're very experienced people, Rick Duke and Sue Biniaz. But I'm not going to go through all the names.
Rick Duke
here.
and who?
Mr. Chairman, Sue Biniaz, who's one of the most experienced negotiators in the world.
Is
Mr. Chairman, let me just say to you,
deputy?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to fill them in here in this way because that would be a violation of our process within the State Department.
You're not going to tell us who's
I'm not going to
your
go
office.
through them by name because that is not the required process of the State Department.
Who's the principal deputy for climate in your office?
As I just said to you, Mr. Chairman,
Who's the chief of staff?
I am going to go through the normal process. Now, an algorithm kicked out that date, the one you're referring to.
I'm not going to
a
argue
human
about
being.
it, Mr. Kerry, Secretary Kerry. I'm not going to argue about it. You said you're not going to answer. You're not going to answer. It's par for the course.
No, I'm
like
going
I
to
said,
answer
there was a
through
FOIA
the
request.
process.
2021 said it wasn't going to be answered until 2024. I'm not going to spend my time arguing about it. You said you're not going to answer now?
Mr. Chairman, don't
accept
just
it.
cut me off. What I'm trying to do is tell you I'm going to follow the process of the State Department, which is normally followed. Where there are circumstances requiring that someone know who the person is, the State Department has complied and done that.
Every office,
where
every
there is
consular,
not
every
a
bureau,
requirement
they have a
that they-
hierarchy. You
where
go
there
into
is
the
not a
military base,
requirement-
it says Joe Biden, it says the secretaries, it says there's a hierarchy. This is standard practice for government.
We
I'm not
have
gonna argue that it's
presented
not standard
with the
practice. You've been it
congressional
long enough.
notification
I want to
the
point another
creation of
arrow on
this
my chart
office.
here, Mr. Secretary.
We
Can you just help
presented
us out?
that
Do
answer.
you answer to the executive office of the president, or do you answer to Secretary Blinken? Because I have emails
I
from
directly to the President of the United States, but
directly
with-
to the president.
That is correct, but with Secretary Blinken, completely informed and aware of everything that.
But you don't answer to Blinken. Thank you. It's good. We just need to know for basic levels of transparency and understanding how this works. I want to go to a couple of questions on policy. It was said by my colleague, global problems require global commitments. And I want to go to some of the global commitments that you might be looking at in COP28 that were looked at in COP27. And I want to understand if you're committing the United States of America to these policies or yes or not. I'm going to just let you know these are simple yes or no questions. I know you've researched them well. I've researched them well. We don't need an explanation of them here. So just number one, cross-border carbon trading. Are you planning at COP28 to commit, this is the number one issue there along with climate reparations, do you plan to commit America to cross-border carbon trading, as my colleague put it, in global commitments?
There's no current proposal or plan that's been agreed to which would require us to do that.
Do you plan on working on a global plan for cross-border carbon trading?
We're exploring with a lot of countries what the various approaches might be, and President Biden has charged us to examine cross-border adjustment mechanisms in order to understand how we can deal with the question of very carbon-intensive produced goods coming into our country, where our folks are trying to reduce
I'll
emissions.
put yes, but say it's a maybe because you didn't answer concretely affirmatively. I'm going to ask one more question.
Well, then
though,
you make this a
in my
game.
time.
If you're turning that into yes when I didn't say yes, you're playing games.
You
Mr.
said it's
Chairman.
a maybe. You didn't say no.
I didn't.
say-
Well, why don't you create a maybe and put it up there?
Next time I will create a maybe. We'll put it in yellow. We'll put the yes in green and the no in red, and we'll put a maybe in yellow. Next time we'll do that. I do want to get to one last question. I'll give you a little extra time, Ranking Member, and that's on this one because I know it's another major priority for COP, and that is, are you planning to commit America to climate reparations? That is to say, we have to pay some other country because they had a flood or they had a hurricane or a typhoon or a wildfire.
under no circumstances.
Very good. I'm glad to hear you say that. I do have a no.
Why
I'll
don't
put it
you
up
create
there.
an exclamation point beside it, too, so you can get
I will
something.
write in an exclamation point for you,
Okay.
and I'm glad that we have agreement on that. I don't know if my black pen will work. We'll see. There we go. There's your exclamation point.